Welcome aboard. It's HQ. That's Amanda Guerra. I am Chris Hassel. The PGA Tour heading up the eastern seaboard from South Carolina to Connecticut for the Travelers Championship. Top 7 players in the world once again in the field, but it's someone who's been outside the top 10 in the world and still outside the top 10 who's getting a ton of action here.
Yes. Okay. So Rory McIlroy might be the #1 player in the entire world as of right now. But for the first time, Christopher, since October, he is not the betting favorite to win the Travelers Championship. The new co-favorites heading into this weekend, according to our partners at William Hill, it changed this morning. Now Justin Thomas and Bryson DeChambeau, both of whom have finished T10 or better the past 2 tournaments. Bryson is highest T3 at the Charles Schwab Challenge 2 weeks ago, just 1 stroke back of the winner there, Daniel Berger. And our mad data scientist, Rick Gehman, who has nailed his picks the past 2 weeks, says he's going to have a really hard time, if not an impossible time, not putting money on these 2 golfers, meaning he is leaning toward them. Taking a look at the latest odds to win the Travelers Championship, according again to our partners at William Hill. The 2 newbies at the top, Justin Thomas, Bryson DeChambeau, followed by Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, Brooks Koepka, Webb Simpson, and then the list goes down from there. So let's dive into this. Let's bring in Chip Patterson, Rick Gehman, Doug Bell. Rick, I'm going to start with you. We're going to get your picks here in a minute. So everybody's just going to have to hang on because that's really what we want here. There is a lot of pressure on you, but are you surprised at all that these 2 guys jumped Rory as the favorite going into this weekend?
I don't think so. Bryson DeChambeau, Justin Thomas, co-favorites to win the Travelers Championship is well-deserved, and I think it's a testament to the depth of the tour and how many guys are capable of winning a golf tournament on a weekly basis. To put this into perspective, the last time that Bryson DeChambeau was either the favorite to win a golf tournament or he was 12-1, it was the first event of this season, the Greenbrier. The next 2 betting favorites in that event, Victor Hovland and Jason Kokrak. So to see Bryson turn a 12-1 number in a field as deep as we are getting this week in Connecticut is incredibly impressive.
Justin Thomas has history at the Travelers Championship. He's played it 5 times. Now he has a couple of missed cuts, but he did tie for 3rd in 2016, which included a 62 in the final round. And since 2015 on tour, no one has recorded more rounds of 65 or better than Justin Thomas. He has 15 of those incredible rounds, including the 59 out in Hawaii and including a 63 last week in the final round at Harbortown. So I really believe Justin Thomas is a hot golfer right now. We've seen his putting gradually get better week to week. And I think the fact that he's been out 3 weeks in a row will spell well for JT, especially since he knows this golf course. As for Bryson DeChambeau, if you break down the numbers, and nobody crunches the numbers more than he does, his putting outside the top 150 and putts inside 5 feet. We saw a lot of misses last week, and from putts 10 to 15 feet, he's outside the top 160 actually there. So Bryson DeChambeau needs to change some things on the green in order to change those top 10s to a W. And I suspect this week at Travelers, he's going to do something crazy with that putter. I mean, he's going to bend it one way or another, and it'll look different than it has the last couple of weeks.
And that's what's so fascinating about Bryson DeChambeau, because I believe that Justin Thomas is one of the best players in the world. I believe that Justin Thomas is in that category that we would consider elite. So for him to be at the top of the odds board, not an entire surprise, especially the way he's played since the restart. But it's a comment from Bryson after his final round this past week at Harbortown that really stood out to me. And he said, the best players in the world have to learn how to adapt. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. And so now, as he starts to learn about adapting, and as he starts to learn how to change his numbers, how to change his game, and ways to do those little tweaks, how is the mad scientist going to be able to handle that without getting too far over his skis? Is he going to be able to put the tweaks in without over adjusting? Bryson learning how to adapt, Bryson learning how to level up, how to be more than just his numbers. This is all stuff that's fascinating for, without a doubt, one of the most intriguing storylines on the PGA Tour since the restart.
Yeah, he's got to adapt to all those muscles and like a 40-pound weight gain. That's hard. Let's talk about Rory, because he is #1 in the world, but now he has had 2 finishes outside the top 30. You know, up until this point, you've said, hey, it's the world's #1. It's not time to hit the panic button. It's Rory. He wasn't familiar with those first 2 courses. He is familiar with this one. Rick, do you have any concern for Rory right now? What's his outlook?
I don't think there's much to be concerned about, even with his subpar finishes the last couple of weeks. That's really only compared to himself. Rory really only looks at the bar of if he's winning golf tournaments or not. We only kind of give him credit if he finishes in the top 5 or not. And he played well enough at Colonial. It was just an opening 9 holes on Sunday that derailed him there. And Kyle Porter made this comment on the First Cut podcast. The 2 courses that he played the last couple of weeks, there's probably a reason that's not on his regular schedule. They might just not be great fits for him, and there's really no reason to be concerned about Rory long term.
Yeah, Rory had really one bad 9 holes at Colonial, and that was the opening 9 on Sunday, and then one bad 9 holes at Harbortown, and that was the opening round on Thursday. And he's kind of settled in. Obviously, the first 3 courses are confining courses, and he likes to really let it out. And that's why I think he'll have a lot of success at the Memorial and the PGA Championship, down in Memphis, TPC Southwind. He likes those kind of golf courses. I think it's great the #1 player in the world committed to the first 3 events. It made him very, very special. But the thing that stands out, and Amanda, you mentioned it, he'd never played Colonial. He had not played Harbortown since he was 19 years old. That was 11 years ago. He played the Travelers Championship in 2017 and 2018, finished top 20 in both of those years, and had rounds of 64 in each of those years. So I think he's come to a place that he likes. And I think we'll see Rory go low and be more consistent. Again, he's played 3 weeks in a row, and all of these great players are quick studies. The more they play, the better they get.
Yeah, I'm going to be off of Rory McIlroy for this week, whether it's in daily fantasy, head-to-heads, or other wagering angles. I think that I'm still continuing to track McIlroy, and the outlook for the rest of the season, however, I think it's still as bright as can be. I mean, we're still going to consider him one of the top players to contend for and win any of the major championships. Yes, he is not listed as the favorite in this tournament for the first time in a while, but that doesn't mean that he is falling way down on the odds board. I mean, we had a 63 at Colonial. We had a 68 and a 69 at Colonial. We had a 65 and a 66 just last week at Harbortown. It's not as though he's out here firing over 70 rounds every single time he gets out there. He still has the ability to go really low since the restart. But consider what we've seen with these finishes outside of the top 30 compared to 6 straight top 10 finishes. It is that adjustment right there that is creating sort of the cognitive dissonance for the #1 player in the world.
The featured groups were announced ahead of the Travelers, and I think it's fun. You get guys like Bryson, Rory, Phil together, Brooks Koepka, Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth. Doug, you're the lucky one. You're the one who's able to get out of the course much more than we are. How do you feel about these featured groups? Do you like them?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the great thing about these stacked fields. Every week it's like, hey, this is the greatest field Colonial's ever had. This is the greatest field they've ever had at RBC Heritage. This is the greatest field they've ever had at the Travelers. So you can't go wrong with the featured groups. And when Phil Mickelson comes back playing for the first time ever as a 50-year-old, and he's going to be trying to hit bombs next to Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy, oh my gosh, that is going to be worth the price of admission. Although nobody's allowed to watch, TV ratings will be very high. I hope Phil can keep it inside the white lines because, you can hit driver at TPC River Highlands, but there are some holes where if you're not careful, you can hit it out of bounds. And there's railroad tracks, and there's water, and there's some danger. I suspect it's going to be pretty thrilling stuff when Phil gets out there. And again, he's the only guy to ever win back-to-back events at the Travelers. Long time ago, but he has a good history there.
I'll tell you what, I've got my eyes on that group that includes Brooks Koepka, Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas. Those are, when you think about the American golf scene, these are studs. I mean, these are alphas. These are players that are out there trying to win major championships every time they get there. For Justin Thomas, it's adding another. For Xander, it would be adding his first. And for Brooks Koepka, well, obviously he is in pursuit of trying to get his 5th. Still really trying to get his game back in line after dealing with the knee injury and dealing with the long layoff. And so these are players that, while we talk about or Rory McIlroy, and we look up there at the top of the game, those are a couple of names that playing together, any one of them could end up getting hot and end up being at the top of the leaderboard. And so in that featured group rhythm where they're going to play together on Thursday, they're going to play together on Friday, how does a performance of one lead to inspire the others? Do they just end up all raising their game to match each other? They certainly have played a lot together, especially in some of the biggest tournaments around. So that's the featured group that I can't wait to watch.
I'm laser focused on Bryson DeChambeau, Rory McIlroy, and Phil Mickelson. That group's got everything that I want. It's got bombs, it's got entertainment, it's got personality, it's got everything. Doug alluded to this. Phil making his first start post 50. To put that into perspective, only 7 winners on the PGA Tour have ever won over the age of 50. So Phil Mickelson trying to add his name to a very short list of golfers that include Sam Snead. When you're on a list with Sam Snead, it's a pretty good list to be on. So we'll see if Phil can kind of rekindle some magic that we've seen from him over the past couple of years, especially at TPC River Highlands. And the other two, Rory and Bryson, are going to put on a stripe show.
Rick, who are people sleeping on that you think is going to have a good weekend?
For me, it's Daniel Berger to try to regain the form that we've seen from him maybe a few years ago.
Birdie at 18.
Daniel Berger is the champion here.
Gentlemen, I'm going to go with Webb Simpson at 30-1. Now he gets an increase in odds, and he goes to a place like Harbor Town that should be a much better fit for him, hitting fairways, hitting greens, and rolling in enough putts to get his second victory of the season.
Oh, goodness. He has found his range.
And we've got a champion in Webb Simpson.
My best bet, Harold Hatton to be the top Englishman at 3-1.
Rick, another very successful week for you after picking Daniel Berger as your sleeper. He won. You picked Webb Simpson as your outright winner at 30-1. He wins. Congratulations. Take a bow.
That's the best thing I have ever seen. Okay. Rick Gehman is just a little golf guru if you've not paid attention. He is probably the rising star at CBS Sports right now because, as you can see, he has nailed the past 2 weeks when it comes to his picks. With the Charles Schwab Challenge, he had Daniel Berger as a sleeper, cha-ching there. For the RBC Heritage last week, his winner, his pick to win, was Webb Simpson, cha-ching there. So can he do it yet again? We're about to find out. All right, Rick Gehman, Chip Patterson, Doug Bell. Rick, I'm going to start with you here. The crystal ball is just amazing. I need to know, is there a lot of pressure on you? Are you feeling nervous right now?
Yeah, one of the most unsustainable things in golf is picking winners. So this is like, let's see if I can hit another one. But yes, very nervous.
Okay, we're going to start with you. We're going to get your pick to win at the end of this. Let's start with your sleepers, who, of course, you had Daniel Berger, as I mentioned, at Colonial. So who is your sleeper, Rick Gehman, going into the Travelers Championship?
Yeah, if we're doing sleepers or long shots, I want to go really deep, and I'm going with Doc Redman, who is 130-1. Who is Doc Redman? He's 149th in the world, and he's made 7 of his last 8 cuts. But what I really like is how he finished at Harbor Town last week. Finished with a 65, 66, and 67. He was 4th in strokes gained tee to green over those 3 rounds, behind only Abraham Ancer, Sergio Garcia, and Joaquin Niemann. All 3 of those guys went on to finish top 5 in the tournament. So we got a really great performance from Doc Redman. 130-1 is very deep. I would probably consider him in more top 10 or top 20 situations.
You know, guys, over the first 2 weeks, there's only 4 players that recorded 8 consecutive rounds in the 60s. Daniel Berger, Brooks Koepka, JT Poston, and the Englishman Matthew Fitzpatrick, who has 45-1 odds. Now, here's a guy who's finished top 30 each of the last 2 weeks. And he's playing really well. You know, he hustled over from England so he could self-quarantine for 2 weeks so he could get busy on this schedule. He has plans of playing 11 out of 13 weeks. During that self-quarantine, by the way, he was allowed to practice and play by himself at the Bears Club in Jupiter. So he got his game tuned up. I talked to him at Colonial, very confident, and he's looking forward to a big summer. And these golf courses, these smaller golf courses, really fit into his game. Matthew Fitzpatrick is my pick for a big-time sleeper this week. I think like Tyrrell Hatton last week, I think the Englishman has something going right now.
I'm going to go with Max Homa. Now, he needs to regain some form that we saw from him earlier in the calendar year. In January and February, he actually had 3 top 10s across 4 starts. And then all of a sudden, you're starting to see one of Twitter's favorite golfers really start to replicate that fanfare that he gets online on the golf course. Last week at Harbour Town, a little bit of a mess around the greens and on the greens, but 5th in the field for the week, strokes gained on approach, 12th in strokes gained tee to green. He's a really great ball striker, admittedly, not championship level when it comes to finishing out the hole, but when it comes to putting and play around the green, I do think that that's something that's a little more hot and cold. That's something where when I'm looking for a sleeper, I would rather have a great ball striker than someone who's good at cleaning it up. So give me Max Homa as my sleeper.
All right, we've seen a couple guys have consistency in the top 10 the past couple of weeks here. So Doug Bell, who is your top 10 lock?
Well, I was really studying this, and I found a guy who loves playing at TPC River Highlands. He's a PGA Tour veteran. Ryan Moore has had ultra success there. You know, of all the money of guys who've won there, who've never actually won, Ryan Moore is second to Paul Casey. Casey's won $7 million, never recorded a win there. Ryan Moore has won $5 million and has never recorded a win at Travelers, but he's come close. 10 of 11 cuts made, 8 top 25s, 5 top 10s, and 2 runner-up finishes. Now, his play up to this point has been so-so, but he's a veteran. He knows his game, and he picks courses like this on his schedule. He knows that he always plays well at the John Deere. He always plays well at the Travelers. He seemingly always plays well at Harbour Town. So my top 10 lock, simply by past history, is Ryan Moore.
Lock up a top 10 for Justin Thomas. And as much of a data guy as I am, sometimes you just have to listen to the players. And Justin Thomas has been telling us how close he is after almost every single round since the restart. We've seen him run hot at times. We've seen the putter run cold. We've seen him get frustrated. We've seen him slap his leg. And then finally it all comes together and culminates with a 63 on Sunday at Harbour Town, which, by the way, included 2 bogeys on the card. It's unbelievable. 3 straight top 10s for Justin Thomas, and only JT and Bryson DeChambeau average more than 2 strokes gained per round in this field. So for me, it's JT to be a top 10.
Well, Doug mentioned his name earlier for my top 10 lock. It's Brooks Koepka, 8 straight rounds in the 60s. And I was listening to what he had to say after the round. He said it just felt nice to feel something again. Felt nice to get the juices flowing. That patella tendon, that kneecap. He feels like it's as healthy as it's been in a really, really long time. And yes, Harbour Town was supposed to be something that neutralizes the Bombers because of its length and the way that Pete Dye set that course up. Well, guess who was still number 1 in the field, strokes gained off the tee? That was Brooks Koepka. I think that his game is in great shape, and if possible, for a 4-time major winner, maybe flying not under the radar, but at least below the fold of the front page. And so give me Brooks Koepka, whose game seems tight, who seems to be really excited about the direction of it after that final round 65. If you want to take him to win, I think that's a good pick too, but I feel like top 10 might be Brooks Koepka's floor.
All right, it is time to get your picks to win. I have been waiting for this since Sunday. So we're going to start with you here, Doug Bell. Who is your pick to win this weekend?
I'm a little nervous. I'm like Sham, the horse that finished second to Secretariat in all the races back in 1973, because Rick is that high right now. But again, Brooks Koepka, 8 straight rounds in the 60s. He's 100% healthy, and we need to emphasize that. After the Tour Championship, he had stem cell injections into his left knee. That patella tendon was really bothering him. It was painful. And then he re-injured the knee over in the Middle East playing a tournament, slipping on a cart path. So it's taken him a long time to get back where he feels comfortable with that powerful golf swing. And he's back. We saw that on display last weekend. Not only is he healthy, but mentally he's in a really good spot. The swagger is back, and you see that Koepka swagger. And on top of that, talking about mental, being good mentally, His brother, Chase Koepka, Monday qualified to get into the Travelers, and Big Brother was there yesterday with his iPhone, shooting the video, posting it on social media, sending it back home to mom and dad. So I think Brooks Koepka is in a really, really good spot, and I think he is my pick to clip this week. At least I'm hoping so.
Xander Schauffele had a frustrating finish at Colonial. He had it. It was right there, and it slipped out of his hands, and he really beat himself up for it. He was, trying to handle that frustration, take it into RBC Heritage, and I think that Schauffele's low finish on the leaderboard has actually provided some value. I mean, he had 8 birdies in his final round. The only problem was he also had a triple bogey on that card. Xander Schauffele being one of the top 10 best players in the Tour tee to green. I just think that his game's in a good spot. I think we've got a little bit of value here. And he's playing with Brooks Koepka, with Justin Thomas, Thursday and Friday. I really feel like the winner's going to come out of that trio. And with Xander Schauffele, I feel like we've got a lot of value there.
All signs point to Bryson DeChambeau as your winner on Sunday evening. 50% of the wins on tour come from golfers who are 20-1 or shorter. We haven't had a winner from that range yet, with Daniel Berger at 66-1, with Webb Simpson at 30-1, but the big dogs are lurking. And Bryson DeChambeau has a superpower that he's not been able to use yet at either Colonial or RBC Heritage, and he gets to take the training wheels off this week at TPC River Highlands. Let me put this into perspective for you guys. The 5 highest strokes gained players this season account for 6 wins. Bryson DeChambeau is second on that list and has 0. He's going to win a lot, and it starts this week at the Travelers Championship.
That was a big statement there, Rick. You said it so calmly, like you were like, oh yeah, this is who I'm picking. Like there's no pressure on you. We are putting that pressure on you. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We'll make sure to check in with you throughout the week. Okay, so there are your picks. Chris, how you feeling there? You see the sleepers, Homa, Doc Redman, Matthew Fitzpatrick, the top 10 lock, Brooks Koepka, Justin Thomas, Ryan Moore. And then the picks to win, Xander Schauffele for Chip. Doug Bell is going with Brooks Koepka, who is 100% healthy. And then your pick to win, Bryson DeChambeau. And by the way, if you would like to enter the CBS props competition, you don't have to put any money down, and you can win $1,000 every round. Our Rick Gehman, our mad data scientist, he comes up with the props. They're a lot of fun, so make sure to go check it out.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.